Hi guys, my name is Phoebe. I'm a knitter based in the UK and I like to knit between Bath, where my parents live, and Durham, where I'm currently completing my third year of studying classics. I also frequently take my knitting to Switzerland, as that's where my boyfriend lives, so we spend a lot of time over there. And I've been knitting for about 1.5 years. Not too long, but I've definitely, in my opinion, knitted a nice range of things. I wanted to make a podcast because I see so many knitting podcasts and they're my favourite thing to watch. I love to snuggle up in the evening with a cup of tea and my knitting and just watch videos. So I thought, why not make a little community of my own on the internet for knitting? I would love to hear what you're currently knitting on. Feel free to grab your knitting, a nice cup of tea. I'm on a red bush or rooibos caramelly tea and it's very nice. It's in my Hamburg mug that I got this autumn whilst visiting a friend. And snuggle up, get your knitting, get cozy, and I hope you enjoy. So the aim of this channel is really to have a space to put my knitting, my finished objects, works in progress, and record some of my acquisitions and just in general record my knitting journey. I think it's very good to have a platform that you can look back on, see what you've been up to, see what stage you're at last year versus this year. So I am going to stick to a pretty regular knitting podcast structure of finished objects, works in progress, and acquisitions. I have a lot of acquisitions this time because I went to a yarn festival 2 days ago, which was phenomenal. I would highly recommend if you have any local or nearby yarn festivals just to walk around and see all of the beautiful local yarn. I'm a big fan of supporting British and Swiss yarn producers because they're my places that I live. So hopefully on this channel you see lots of lovely British yarn. There will be a bit of drops here, there and everywhere because I'm a student and I try to keep my knitting budget as low as possible. However, where I can, I do try to shop local, British, ethically sourced yarn, muslin free, everything like that. So without further ado, let's dive into my finished objects. So first up, I only have 1.5 finished objects today because I think it's best to focus on my current or recently finished projects because they do vary quite seasonally. So my first finished object for today is something that I actually knit for my boyfriend, and this is the Moby Sweater Man by Petite Knit. Now this was my first ever top-down construction, circular knitting, cabled, textured piece that I've ever made. And although the difficulty online says for experienced knitters, I would highly recommend, if you really like the jumper, giving it a go. There are lots of useful videos on her website, but also a very useful video on YouTube, which I'll link down below if you're interested. I think the best way to learn is to learn by doing. So if I can do it, I think everyone should give it a go if they love it. And it is this beautiful, 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 beautiful cabled, cross-textured jumper with a moss stitch down here. And this is knitted up in the West Yorkshire Spinners Jacob Fleece DK in the colour brown. The pattern is on 4mm needles, and I hit gauge with that yarn. I have quite a tight knitting style, I would say, and I've heard petite knit can be quite loose with her gauges. However, I seem to hit gauge completely fine, and it worked up. It took me about 4 months, but I also knit alongside studying, so I don't have loads and loads of time to be knitting, but increasingly I'm finding little pockets in the day where I can. So where was I? Yeah, hit gauge. It's a top-down construction. You start by knitting the back panel, and then you knit the front panel, join in the round under the arms, knit in the round, add on the sleeves, do the cuffs, do the neck, and yeah, it works up pretty well. My boyfriend really loves it. He wears it a lot. I will insert some pictures of him wearing it here. But yeah, this is my Moby sweater by Petite Knit. If you have any questions or any comments, leave them down below. But I am very happy with how it turned out. I also knit it, sorry, I forgot to say, I also knit it in the size large, men's large, so that it has some nice positive ease on my partner. So yeah, my Moby sweater man by Petite Knit. On to my half finished object. This is the Chantal Mitten by Marika Knit, and one thing I have to say about this is, wow, the pattern writing is phenomenal. If you are someone that likes patterns that take you from beginning to end in a clear way, that are clearly written, I would highly suggest her. Really incredible pattern writer, and I definitely have been inspired to make some more things from her because of that. But back to the object. This is the Chantal Mitten. You start by casting on here, and you work all the way to here, do some increases for the thumb, and then you put the stitches for the thumb onto a stitch holder, finish this, tie it up at the end, come back to the thumb, tie that up in the end, and then it's all done. And it's worked in a slip stitch pattern. I've knit mine in the Rowan Alpaca Classic. My mum has lots of this yarn at home, and she really wanted a pair of mittens. So for Christmas, I thought, if she wants some mittens and she likes the colour pink, why not make her some mittens? So this is the first one that is done. The second one is currently on the needles. And yeah, I would highly recommend. This is the Chantal Mitten by Marika Knit. So segueing into the works in progress, because this kind of carries on from where we just left off. This is the second Chantal Mitten, and I forgot to say earlier, but these are knit on 3mm needles, US 2.5s. My needle choice of preference are the Chalgu, I don't know if that will focus, the Chalgu knitting needles. They are my favourite. They were a birthday present from my boyfriend last year, and I have never used anything else, because before I used to work with flat knitting and then seaming things, and the circular knitting has completely changed the game. I am obsessed. It makes it so much easier. It's just a completely different experience, and also these needles are phenomenal. There's no catching from the join between the cable and the needle. It's a very easy mechanism to screw, to detach, and yeah, I would highly recommend. They are an investment, but if coming up to Christmas, you fancy putting them on your Christmas list, I would highly recommend, and yeah, I'm sure they would make your knitting 10 times more enjoyable. And I use these little stitch holders from, there we go. I get them from a local yarn shop in Bath called Wool. It's just Wool with a full stop. And the woman who works there is really, really lovely. She's super helpful. If you have any questions, she is amazing. So if you're in the Bath area, I would highly recommend checking that out. Or if you're visiting Bath as a knitter, definitely go to Wool. And let's move on to the next. My next work in progress is a felted slipper, and it's a free pattern on Ravelry from a designer called Monique Ray. They are the Scruff Slippers, and it's a felted knit pattern, so you knit the entire slipper. You start by knitting the sole, and then you pick up stitches and you do the shaping for the top, which I'm currently in the process of doing, and then you chuck them in the washing machine and the tumble dryer, and apparently out comes some amazing slippers. So I'm very excited to see if that works. It is my first felted knit pattern, and I've never knit a pair of slippers before. The pattern is worked on 8mm needles, which feel a bit like knitting with cutlery, with knives and forks. They feel so big compared to my little 2.5s that I've been knitting the mittens on. But it works up so quickly. I think I spent an hour on this morning, and I've already got the sole, I've got the pickup done, and I'm already onto the shaping. So I'm sure if you sit down for a day or a weekend, you could get these done quite easily. By the time this podcast goes out, maybe they will be done, so I will insert a picture if they're not, but if there isn't, then probably I haven't finished them quite yet. But no, they are really easy. They're working up very quickly. The pattern has no charts. It's all written row by row, but it is a free pattern on Ravelry. I also forgot to mention this is knitted up in Drops Alaska, which is a 100% wool. I think it's superwash, and it's meant to be knitted up on 5mm needles, but because of the felting process, you can knit it up on large needles so that when you felt the object, it's much easier and has more room to shrink. They are the Scruff Slippers by Monique Ray. My final work in progress is something that I think will be going a bit dormant over winter. I started it as a late summer knit and was really excited, but then got a bit distracted by autumnal knitting and finishing off the Moby sweater. But this is the Seashore Skirt by Kuta, which is a 2-piece set, and I think she's just released a dress as well. And I find the lace work beautiful on the patterns. So maybe you can't see there, but this is the lace motif. I'll insert a picture of what it's meant to look like when it's finished, but it works up very easily. It's the first lace pattern that I've done, and she releases free tutorials on Instagram, which help a lot. And her patterns are very easy to read. They are, well, the skirt is knit up on a 4mm needle. Again, I'm using my Chow Goose. And the yarn that I've been knitting this up in is Save the Yarn Carla, which is a Swiss yarn brand who tries to make sure that no yarn goes to waste. So they use lots of discontinued yarn, or they'll repurpose yarn and it's a brand that I think if you are looking for a yarn company that's very sustainable and has a very good eco-friendly sustainable mission, I would highly recommend checking out Save the Yarns. They have some beautiful compositions. This one is a silk and cotton mix, and gauge wise it's very good for replacing the Knitting for Olive pure silk. I've never used it before, but it has the same gauge. This is knitted with 2 strands held together, but it hits the same gauge and it's much more affordable, and the result in my opinion is just, if not more, beautiful. So that is my Seashore Skirt by Kika. But moving on to the last part of today's podcast, I have a rather large pile of acquisitions. I would just like to point out that this is not normal for me. I don't normally spend much money on yarn at all because A, I'm quite a slow knitter, but B, I try to only buy yarn for a project that I'm casting on. So yes, but there are lots of acquisitions today because I went to the Knit and Stitch Festival, which is a crafting festival based in Harrogate in the north of England. There are, I think, 2 or 3 other destinations that the fair goes to. So if it's local to you, or if you have a local yarn festival, I would highly recommend going. But yeah, the first acquisition today is this beautiful knitting bag from the company Redesigned Project. I don't know if that's it. There we go. And this is their new colourway. It's patchwork leather from, I'm guessing, their previous bags and leather colours. And I've seen them online quite a lot. I've seen them over Instagram, and I finally managed to get my hands on one. And it's absolutely beautiful. It's more beautiful in person. So the inside of the bag is divided into 2 spaces. You have, I'm guessing, for yarn or for projects, and it has this handy little gap at the bottom here that you can feed your thread through or your yarn through, so that you can have the bag shut so that nothing falls out, and you can also knit on the go, which I think is great. It also has these 2 pockets over here, and I like to keep a little notebook when I'm knitting for any notes I have on a pattern, to mark where I am in a pattern, to note any modifications, and this fits perfectly in the little pocket. It also has a central pocket here for more notions, and then on this side it has a range of, let me show you with a pen, has a range of loops that you can put things through, and it's perfect for holding on to needles if you have any circular needles or flat needles that don't fit into a case. It's a really good idea to have them in your knitting bag. So I think the way I'm going to do this is keep my lovely bag here, and as I go through the other acquisitions I will put them into here. Next up, onto another storage solution. I got this beautiful cow print purse, and this is for me to put all of my notions into, any little scissors, any row counters. I currently, or previously, was storing everything in these little plastic bags, but they are starting to rip on the side here. I don't know why it's not focusing. They're starting to rip, so I thought it's probably best to have somewhere that I can put everything in, keep it all safe, not lose anything, and that will live in my bag. I bought the bag from the same company that I bought these little bits from, and it's the company called Market Town Yarns, and they're based in Suffolk in England. There you go. and they are a hand dyer company who also stock lots of notions and accessories, but something I found really special was that it is a husband and wife that run the company, and the husband makes all of these beautiful little knitting notions. So this is a row counter that he has designed and handcrafted, and they were quite reasonably priced, whilst the wife dyes all of the yarn. So apart from the row counter and the bag, from them I also bought the silky 4-ply merino and mulberry silk mix, and I intend to make a lovely pair of socks for myself with this yarn. So there is the label. See if I can show you there you go. And it's in this beautiful pink, baby pink colour with a slight shine on it, and I think they will knit up to be a really lovely, beautiful pair of socks. And the pattern I am currently thinking about is the Sonder Yarn Co. sock pattern. I'll put it up on the screen because I'm not 100% sure, but it again is a free knitting pattern on Ravelry, and the pattern offers 3 variations of socks: a rib, a full stockinette, and a cuff and stockinette variation. So I will link that down below, but if you're interested in knitting a pair of socks and want a free pattern, I would highly recommend that one. That is everything that I bought from Market Town Yarns, and they are a beautiful English independent company. If you are in the market looking for some beautiful yarn or also some notions, I would highly recommend going online, looking them up. And I think they also have a physical yarn store in Suffolk. However, I don't live in or near Suffolk, so that's the beauty of going to these yarn fairs. You get to see so many things that you wouldn't necessarily see in your local area. The next acquisition that I bought was from this company called Wool Tops, and they again are a English-based yarn brand who spin and dye their own yarns, and they had a very big sale going on. So they had this DK weight 100% British Corriedale yarn in 100-gram skeins for £6 a skein, which I thought for 100% Britishly sourced and spun and dyed yarn, that was a very good price. So I got the undyed, if it will focus. There we go. This is their undyed variation, and with this I intend to knit the Glacis sweater by Sophia Scottford, and it's a beautiful high neck, slim arm jumper, and it does have some detailing down the side that you can add on after knitting the whole garment. However, I haven't decided if I'm going to do that yet. I really like the fit. I think it's very elegant, and I think it will be a timeless classic in my wardrobe. From the same company, I also got the exact same yarn, the DK weight Corriedale, in a beautiful autumnal rusty red colour. And with this, I intend to knit the Blazen, I'll put it on the screen, but it's a beautiful jumper with a big cable detail down the middle, and it's by the designer Ago Knitwear. I also have always wanted to knit her Ulysses jumper. However, I've heard that that is rather difficult, and I think I have enough beautiful yarn and beautiful projects to be getting on for now. but fingers crossed that will appear in a later podcast at some point. So that is the DK Weight Wool Tops yarn, Britishly sourced, Britishly spun, and it's beautiful. It's beautifully soft and it will make a beautiful jumper. Before I get onto the last acquisition that I got at the yarn festival, I would just like to talk about some Christmas plans that I have for my stepdad and for my boyfriend. I intend to knit a pair of socks for both of them with the Drops Fable self-striping yarn. One is in this beautiful blue, grey, cream, navy colourway, and this one is for my boyfriend because he's Swiss and I think it will remind him of the Swiss Alps. And this one is for my stepdad. It's in a brown, cream, beige and more neutral colourway, and again it is the self-striping yarn, but I think that will be very beautiful and I think he will greatly appreciate them. So I've got some mittens for my mum, some socks for my boyfriend, some socks for my stepdad, and I think that might be it for Christmas knitting this year, especially given that my boyfriend just got a very lovely jumper. The last acquisition that I have today is not actually a knitting one, so if you're not interested in anything that isn't knitting, then you are more than welcome to leave at this point, but hopefully you find it as interesting as I do and want to stay. So I went back to Switzerland last weekend with my boyfriend and we went to a museum and we saw a beautiful tablecloth. I will put a picture here. And it's a beautifully traditional embroidered tablecloth, and I thought how lovely it would be to make one of my own over the next few months or years and have it as a kind of staple piece or traditional family piece that we keep forever, or at least I keep forever. So yeah, I went to this store called, it's run by a woman called Annie Brooke, and I think her company was called For the Love of Stitch. I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, if you can see that. And she does these incredibly detailed and beautiful embroidery works, and I asked her if I could have some help, just kind of getting into it, what resources I need, how to get started, and she was more than helpful. She gave me this chart with all the different stitches on, which will help a lot. I also got from her some little needles which have this beautiful seahorse pattern on for the actual embroidery itself. And then she very kindly gave me this practice stencil where you draw dots in all the different holes, and then it gives you almost a guide as to where to sew in the fabric. And then of course I got a loop because you need one to hold the fabric tight. And then I got a beautiful selection of yarns. They had an incredible offer of 5 yarns for a certain discounted rate. So I got a range of colours from some greens, some bright pinks, and some more neutral colours like these. So hopefully I will have a decent colour scheme to do some animals like the ones seen on the tablecloth that I've shown, but also add my own twist of some alpine flowers or some English flowers, some roses, some berries, and yeah, hopefully it turns out as beautiful and wonderfully handmade and crafted as the one I saw in the museum. So that is everything that I have for today, and hopefully if anyone has clicked on this and has stayed till the end, I'm more than grateful for having you here. It's been lovely speaking about my knitting, and I would love to hear what you're working on, if you're taking up any new crafting adventures, if you're just getting into knitting, or if you have any advice for a beginner, intermediate knitter. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed being here. Fingers crossed there will be another episode, and have a lovely rest of your day, have a lovely rest of your week, and until next time, happy crafting.